QR code on your screen right now. Up next with the world, it's Yalda. I'll see you tomorrow at 8.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Tonight, two presidents openly trade insults over the conflict in Ukraine. At stake, the lives of thousands of people and the future of European security. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Volodymyr Zelenskyy insists Donald Trump and his team need to be more truthful. America's leader responds by branding him a dictator without elections.
Unfortunately, President Trump, with who we have great respect as a leader, and the American people who support us, but unfortunately, he lives in this disinformation space.
A war of words, but also a war on the ground, as a barrage of Russian drones leaves residents without power in the southern city of Odessa. Tonight, I'll ask a senior Ukrainian politician just how much territory his country is willing to give up in exchange for peace. Plus, how did more than 150 whales end up stranded on a remote beach in Tasmania? I'll ask the man investigating mass events around the world. And why this teenage activist who has a bounty for her arrest is calling on the UK government to do more to protect her. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. We begin tonight with a bitter and deepening feud between two leaders. Ukraine's president has been treading a fine line in his dealings with the United States. But today he went on the attack. Volodymyr Zelenskyy effectively accused Donald Trump and his team of lying, suggesting they had been snared in President Putin's web of disinformation. He's taking a big risk, especially since Kyiv depends on Washington for weaponry and funding. And as you'd expect, the response from the US president was swift and cutting. You'll remember last night on the program, we heard him suggest that his Ukrainian counterpart was to blame for the war. Well, now he's going further. And I just want to show you his words because they are stark and for a lot of us here in Europe, frankly, scary. At just before 11 a.m. local time in Miami, Mr. Trump posted, "A dictator without elections. Zelenskyy better move fast or he's not going to have a country left." And this is the bit that will cause even more of a headache for many leaders here. You can almost hear him gloating when he writes, "This war is far more important to Europe than it is to us. We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation." That Truth Social post was delivered after yesterday's reset of relations between Russia and the United States. It cements the Trump doctrine of America first and alone, except when there is a profit to be made. We'll discuss that all tonight. But let's get started with our first report from our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes.
Even as Washington and Moscow talk peace, Ukraine is pummeled by Russia's war. A civilian energy site ablaze after a drone strike in the port city of Odessa. But enemy fire is no longer the only threat, as Donald Trump unleashed an extraordinary attack against Ukraine's president. Posting on social media, he called Volodymyr Zelenskyy a dictator who refuses to hold elections and warned him he'd better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. "I love Ukraine, but Zelenskyy has done a terrible job. His country is shattered and millions have unnecessarily died." The outburst came after Mr. Zelenskyy responded to an earlier verbal battering, including a false claim he only has a 4% approval rating.
We understand where it's coming from, Russia, and we have evidence that these figures are being discussed between the US and Russia. Unfortunately, President Trump, whom we deeply respect as the leader of a nation we highly value, is also caught in this disinformation space. I would like to see more truth from Trump's team.
One hope is the arrival of this man to Kyiv.
Good morning, y'all. How you doing today?
Keith Kellogg is the US envoy to Ukraine, here for talks with Mr. Zelenskyy.
We're going to listen. We understand the need for security guarantees. It was very clear to us the importance of sovereignty of this nation and independence of this nation as well. And part of my mission is to sit and listen.
Welcome words, but do they carry weight in the White House?
Do we have shared values? Do we share the value of democracy, international legislation? Do we respect the internationally accepted borders? If so, then we should protect them. We should unite and protect them. If not, then there's a big question mark.
So what is your message to Donald Trump?
He is smart, he is brave, he is powerful. I want him to use this, his intelligence and his power in the right way.
Kyiv also preparing, though, for that not to be the case.
Ukraine's president clearly felt he had no choice but to speak out, given the growing criticism from Washington. But it's a high-risk move, given his reliance on US military support, the premium Donald Trump places on loyalty, and the fact that any friction between the US and Ukraine only plays into one person's hands, and that's Vladimir Putin's.
Russia's leader is already enjoying a rekindling of relations and could soon hold talks with President Trump in person.
We have a desire to hold such a meeting, and I would like to hold this meeting. But I repeat once again, it needs to be prepared so that it brings a result.
A chilling prospect for Ukraine. But this country hasn't yet given up hope. It has little else to cling to. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Kyiv.
Well, President Trump is due to speak at an event in Miami in just under an hour's time. Mark Stone is in that city for us. Mark, good to see you. I mean, increasingly we're seeing diplomacy here by social media.
For Europe, what an unnerving day for European leaders. I've just seen Britain's ambassador to the United States, Lord Mandelson, walk into this conference here because he wants to hear firsthand what Donald Trump has to say. Ostensibly, what the president will talk about is investment in Saudi Arabia and Saudi investment in the United States. Saudi Arabia, of course, has become such a key regional power broker. It is in Riyadh that those talks on Ukraine were held just a couple of days ago without Ukraine at the table. Everyone, though, is clearly watching to see what Donald Trump says. Every time he speaks, it seems to be relatively free-flowing. And so will he make any more comments that perhaps echo what he said on social media this morning? When Zelenskyy gave that news conference earlier on this morning, I was in little doubt, Yalda, that Donald Trump would respond with fire and fury. And so he did, because he never wants to be undermined. But the fact that he spoke about Ukraine's leader, about the leader of a country that America has been front and centre of defending and helping over so many years is quite remarkable. And, you know, the Trump family is doubling down. In the last few minutes, Donald Trump Jr. Has retweeted a video which shows the Zelenskyy in a former life as a comedian dancing in a costume. And he's retweeted it and said Zelenskyy should really just go and win the war without our endless dollars. Let's see how that works out. So the Trump family, from the White House down, is doubling down on this extraordinary war of words with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And the implications, of course, for Europe are profound, Yalda.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, this feud is escalating. And we've heard from the Vice President, J.D. Vance, as well, who said, you know, the way to approach the president is not by insulting him. We've heard also from Senator Lindsey Graham, who's been reacting. Let's just have a listen.
There's one person that Putin really is afraid of, and that's Trump. And if you ever get a good deal on Ukraine, it'll be because Trump created a sense of dread by Russia. There will be no deal without Ukraine being consulted and on board, because it won't work. I talked to Zelenskyy today. Nobody is going to do anything that you're not involved with.
Mark, that was Senator Lindsey Graham there saying that if there's anyone that Vladimir Putin is afraid of, it's Donald Trump. But frankly, the threatening words are not being hurled at Putin at the moment. It's being hurled at an ally and partner. But also, you know, all eyes on European leaders in terms of how they're going to react to this. Certainly in the last hour or so, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has responded in support of President Zelenskyy.
Yeah, you know, many times over the past month or so since Donald Trump was inaugurated, we've discussed who it would be who would choose or feel compelled to cross Donald Trump, to criticise him for something that he has done that they don't believe is right. Well, that person is Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who clearly felt compelled to call him out, saying, as you've described, that he is in a misinformation bubble. But that now compels other leaders to be drawn on it. And we heard in the Commons today in London the opposition telling David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, that he needs to call Trump out. Well, it's very, very difficult for countries to do that because they do not want to be caught in the wrath of Donald Trump either. But the Prime Minister has released a statement. Keir Starmer has said that he expresses support for Zelenskyy as Ukraine's democratically elected leader, and that it is perfectly reasonable to suspend elections during wartime, as the UK did during World War II. Now, Keir Starmer is here in Washington, well, is in the US, in Washington, next week. He was initially kind of being framed as the broker, as Europe's representative in Washington, to try and explain to Donald Trump why defending Ukraine, why supporting Ukraine, it continues to be so important. We understand now that the French President, Emmanuel Macron, will also be in Washington next week. So such an important week. But right now, my eyes are on this building in the next 40 minutes or so, where we will hear from Donald Trump and hear whether he has anything more to say about this extraordinary day.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thank you so much. Well, as we've been saying, the war of words, the feud, has escalated between the two leaders, and it's clear Ukraine's president was not holding back when he held his news conference this morning. Just have a listen to a little more of what he had to say.
Since we're talking about 4%, we have seen this disinformation. We understand that it is coming from Russia. We understand this, and we have evidence that these numbers are being discussed between America and Russia. That is, unfortunately, President Trump. And with great respect for him as a leader of the people, which we respect very much, the American people who constantly support us, unfortunately, lives in this disinformation space. Discussing their bilateral issues in Saudi Arabia is their right. although I believe that the United States of America is helping Putin to come out of years of isolation imposed absolutely fairly after the full-scale invasion. No one is irritated. We're ready for anything. The story that 90% of all aid comes from the United States, we understand that. Well, the truth is slightly different. And that is why I would like Trump's team to be more truthful, because all of this certainly does not have a positive impact on Ukraine, but it does help to bring Putin out of isolation.
Well, President Zelensky's tone was softer tonight. He said that Europe, America and Ukraine could work together for what he described as a reliable and lasting peace, one that ensures that Russia cannot invade again. That's his hope. But in reality, the US has hinted concessions will be needed from both sides. That could include Ukrainian territory. Well, over the last 10 years, Russia has taken huge chunks out of Ukraine's territory. In 2014, they annexed Crimea, and Russian-backed separatists gradually took over parts of the eastern Donbas region. After the full-scale invasion of 2022, Russia seized more land in the east and parts of the south, despite counterattacks by Ukraine. They now occupy over 112,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian land, with the front line stretching for over 1,000 kilometers. Well, so would Ukraine be willing to leave some of its land in Russian hands in exchange for peace? Well, joining me now is Alexander Mereshko, an MP with Volodymyr Zelensky's servant of the People Party. He's also chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Ukrainian Parliament. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on the programme. We'll talk in a moment about potential preemptive concessions that could come out of these discussions between the United States and Russia and where Ukraine sits on all of this. But just going back to what we've been hearing from President Zelensky, this feud, this war of words between Donald Trump and President Zelensky, just your reaction and that of your colleagues in Ukraine.
Well, I don't consider it to be a feud or a war of words because, you know, Ukraine and the United States are very close allies and partners and friends. And between friends can be some misunderstandings, can be different opinions. And the only way to settle these issues or to prevent it from happening is to have direct, honest dialogue. And to me, it's a crucial issue to have direct contact, direct meeting, maybe summit between President Trump and President Zelensky. And I also hope that someday Mr. Trump will...
Do you think it needs to happen on social media? Sure. I mean, allies and friends, partners, the United States has supported Ukraine over the course of the last 3 years. And of course, they should have frank and open conversations. But should Donald Trump be calling the president of Ukraine a dictator and calling on Ukraine to hold elections?
Well, this is exactly why we shouldn't trust social media. We should trust only direct, open conversation between alive people. This is what matters. And I'm sure that, well, for example, tomorrow, President Zelensky has a meeting with General Galak. And I'm sure that he will be able to present our arguments, convincing, persuasive arguments. And these arguments, these narratives will be conveyed by General Galak to President Trump. But what is really important is to have direct conversation between President Zelensky and President Trump. We have tremendous respect for President Trump. Both presidents are democratically elected leaders. We are in a state of war and we count on American support. We're grateful for this support, but to survive, we need more help, more support from our ally, from our friend, the United States.
Well, at present, what you have is the US president phoning and speaking on the phone with the Russian president. Ukraine and the Europeans were not made aware of that. They do not currently have a seat at the table. The Saudi talks have begun where both sides have met, and Ukraine was told to wait a day, and President Zelensky did not go. Where do you think this will ultimately leave Ukraine? Do you think Ukraine will end up betrayed and left alone by the United States and its Western partners?
I don't believe that Ukraine will be betrayed by the United States because we continue to enjoy tremendous support, bipartisan support from both Democrats and Republicans, and we value this support very highly. So I don't believe in this. But of course, we would like our friends, American friends, to continue to respect a crucial principle: nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Because we understand the United States might have its own track or negotiations or issues to discuss with Russia. It's totally understandable. But the thing is, when it comes to our fate, when it has impact upon Ukraine, we would like to participate in this. I think it's fair, it's in line with international law, and it's in line with American principles.
Are you worried that there are already concessions that are being made? For example, Ukraine's path to NATO, or the sort of accepting that the land that Russia has managed to acquire in this war, they will not be giving that back, or having American troops on the ground, security guarantees from the Americans. Do you see that as preemptive concessions already?
I don't believe in such concessions, which go against Ukrainian interests, against our survival, for a very simple reason. Because even if we imagine that the United States and Russia has reached such a deal, but it cannot be imposed upon Ukraine. Our people will never agree to something which hurts our interests, which prevents us from surviving and defending our country. It's just impossible. We have proved it many times.
Okay, Alexander Mereshko, we're really grateful for your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, the question of whether Ukraine could survive without America's support is the focus of this week's podcast with me and NBC's chief foreign correspondent, and my podcast partner, Richard Engel, will be joining us in a moment on the programme. So do stay with us for that. That will be coming up. Stay with me, because coming up, we'll be focusing on the job cuts across America. We'll be hearing from some of the 95,000 workers sacked in the past 4 weeks. They've been let go of as part of an efficiency drive being led by Elon Musk, and they've got a message for the billionaire. That's all coming up.
Paris reverberated to the sights, sounds and smells of conflict. There's a focal point to all this anger, and that is Emmanuel Macron.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach.
I've reported on migration across Europe, close up on the ground, understanding that sense of desperation and meeting the criminal gangs behind it.
This old fishing boat set off from the Libyan port of Tobruk. There were 606 people who were on board.
So we've been distributing life jackets to all the people on board this boat, and now the first person is coming on board.
This is the ugly side of Italian football.
In Italy, everything is really organized.
Football's problems with hooliganism, racism were just dormant, and now they're back and they're getting worse. We cover so many countries, languages and cultures, and work hard to gain trust to bring you the full story first.
Help is slowly reaching these places.
It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust.
This is a picture of destruction.
Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation.
These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks. I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent. Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem. Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Welcome back. When Elon Musk walked into the White House, he brought with him the ethos of Silicon Valley: move fast and break things. The federal government is already feeling the brunt. Almost 100,000 employees have lost their jobs, and with the president's blessing, Musk plans to cut it down even further in size. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner spoke to some of those affected.
National parks like Yosemite in California are often considered the crown jewels of America. Millions of people visit here from around the world, but beauty offers no protection from brutal, sweeping job cuts. Workers, including park rangers, locksmiths, even emergency medical staff, fired by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency.
I received a termination notice on Friday at 4:22 p.m.
Oleg was fired from his job cleaning park facilities, including the toilets.
Why am I a target? I don't make that much money. I make around $40,000 a year. Like, why me? Why am I the fat? But I chose to come serve the American people and the international community because I truly believe that our national parks are truly one of America's best ideas.
What would you say to President Trump, to Elon Musk, if you could?
I'd like to tell him, come look at my bathrooms and tell me if I'm essential or not.
National park workers are the latest to come into Musk's firing line. His department has already cut 95,000 jobs across government. This is clearly a long way from Washington, D.C. But it's in places like this that the true extent of Elon Musk's move fast and break things approach to national government is being felt. He instituted similar slash and burn cost cutting at his private companies like Tesla. But national parks, some would argue, are a different beast.
It just equates to money, but there is no money that can replace this.
How much will it affect places like this?
A whole lot, right? The ramifications are consequential.
I think that's sort of the discouraging thing, is trying to explain to your kids why the billionaires don't see it. From our perspective as like everyday people, how do you convince people that don't understand
that this matters?
Yeah, that this matters, and that the natural world, that we're interconnected with the natural world, and that we're actually doing ourselves a disservice when we think these green spaces are not a part of our own lives.
President Trump and Elon Musk would say there is a huge amount of inefficiency in government.
It's horrible. Oh, it's so true. And it's been going on for decades. So, yeah, I'm all for what he's doing, what Elon Musk is doing. I'm supportive. You know, we'll see. Agencies like the National Park Service, I think those should be last.
There is seemingly no order to these cuts, and critics would say no rhyme or reason to who stays and who goes. Only the promise that there's more to come. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Yosemite National Park.
Well, criticism of Elon Musk extends far beyond job cuts. There's major concern about data being accessed by his Department of Government Efficiency. Senior Democrats have called for an investigation into the legality of its actions. Well, joining me now is US Democratic Congressman Steve Cohen, who is a representative from the state of Tennessee. Thank you so much, Congressman, for joining us here on the programme. Doge has ignited major debate and panic on some level. I mean, the likes of Newt Gingrich have predicted that Doge will ultimately produce a dramatically smaller government. They'll keep what works and they'll drop what doesn't. Do you agree with that?
I don't know what he's going to produce. Most of what he's produced has been lies and misinformation. He talked about condoms in Gaza, and there were no such things. There was birth control in Mozambique, and they have a province called Gaza, but nothing to do with Hamas or the Palestinian Gaza. He's talked about finding $8 billion of waste in some particular government agency, and it turned out it was $8 million. They couldn't read a difference between a B and an M. I tell you, he's given the whole country a BM.
I guess the question is, where are the Democrats in all of this? They're still licking their wounds. What are they going to do in terms of, pushing back where they think that there are concerns? Or are they just going to leave it all to the courts?
Well, we're doing all we can. They have a majority in both the House and the Senate. We're introducing bills that if we get 3 Republicans, we can pass them. We'll have to go through probably a process to get them on the calendar because the speaker is totally in Trump's corner. But we can do that with what's called discharge petition and possibly get them voted on. So we're introducing legislation. We are not going to cooperate with them necessarily in getting a budget passed. They'll have to deal with it on their own, and they'll have to find out that they have to work with the Democrats. So we're taking legislative action. We're involved in the litigation, which has been effective in what they're doing and might more so in the future. And we're encouraging people to mobilize and let their voices be heard, write their senators.
But do you think there is currently a lack of leadership from the Democrats? I mean, they sort of feel like they're missing in action at the moment.
Well, I'm a Democrat, and I've been a Democrat all my life. And there are Democrats who are criticizing us for not going into the government offices and fighting with the Doge people and keeping them out of the offices. Well, that's not the proper conduct, and that's not what we're going to do, and that's not what Congress people do. But we are going to keep sending the message out, making statements from the floor, statements to our constituents, statements to the press, introducing legislation to be effective in canceling what they're doing and stopping it, and just pointing out they talk about fraud, abuse, and waste, but they've not shown it. They claim they got $50 billion in waste. They don't itemize it. They won't say it. It's just words that roll off their sleeves. And it's the same thing with immigrants they pick up, just rolls off their sleeves to say, oh, we're getting people who've committed murder, child pedophilia, they say, as if that, it's a redundancy, but they like to emphasize child and rape.
Yet, something seems to be resonating because Donald Trump's approval rating continues to go up.
Well, he's appealing to his base, and so far his base, I guess, has supported him. And a lot of those people say, well, we think that there's a lot of waste in government. Most of the waste in government is between the ears of the people that think that there's waste. Government, there's some problems, but government does a good job and serves the public. And it's not supposed to be a profit-making entity like private enterprise is. Musk cut a lot of people at Twitter. At Twitter, he might have cut 80% of the workforce or something. Twitter's not what it used to be. It hasn't made money, and it's an awful social media post. I went to Blue Sky.
I guess with any bureaucracy, there's often debate and discussion about reforming and rebuilding. I guess what's happening here at the moment is it appears like things are being, burnt down, but we're not quite sure what the alternatives are.
Well, the alternative is to keep your grubby hands off of it and only put people in those positions that know what government does, which agencies does what, and which are the most important. They cut all the people out of the nuclear energy safety areas. They're trying to find them again because they cut off their email and their phones immediately, trying to find them. Oh, we made a mistake. We need you. Of course we need nuclear safety. They cut out a lot of people in the forest divisions that help prevent fires and help clean up waste to make it less likely to have a major forest fire. We just saw it in California. I think they might have made a mistake, and they put people out of the CDC who are working on the bird flu, and now they're trying to hire those people back. These are not scalpels. They're not educated cuts. It's a sledgehammer. And if Elon Musk, he may be good at buying companies as he did Twitter, as he did SpaceX, and as he did with Tesla, and squeezing waste out of them and firing people and making them work long hours and making a profit. But he's not good at government. He doesn't understand government. When he first came in and we had a budget to vote on in December, he came out and made false statements. He said the budget said that we'll put $3 billion into a football stadium. There was nothing in there about giving any money to a football stadium. He said that Congress was voting themselves a 43% pay raise. There was a 3% pay raise. The man can read numbers. He just doesn't, either he lies like Trump does, or he's not really that smart.
Well, we'll have to leave it there, Congressman. Congressman Steve Cohen, thank you very much for joining us.
Slava Ukraini.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, 150 whales stranded on a remote beach in Tasmania. But how did they end up there in the first place? I asked the scientist investigating the phenomenon known as beaching.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Welcome back. Is enough being done to protect Hong Kongers in the UK? Well, many fled to Britain following a crackdown on those within pro-democracy protest movements. In 2020, China introduced a controversial national security law in response to widespread protests in Hong Kong. This ultimately reduced civil freedoms and led to the infamous imprisonment of the Hong Kong 47. Among those wanted by the Hong Kong authorities is Chloe Chung. She fled Hong Kong when she was 15. An arrest warrant has since been issued featuring an image of her, aged 11. The warrant points to her speeches and social media activity as reasoning for the warrant. I spoke to her and the activist Mark Clifford about the crackdown.
In 2019, when the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement broke out, it's my first time going to an actual protest. And as a Hong Konger who love Hong Kong, we knew that we have to stand out against the extradition bill with China. And I went to the protest. It's my first time experiencing tear gas. I witnessed serious police brutality in Hong Kong. I witnessed a police stepped on a protester's neck, which actually changed my mind about how I look at Hong Kong, where I born, where I love. And we learn at school that Hong Kong has the rule of law. We have the freedom to speak, we have the freedom to protest, we have all the freedom. That eventually it's actually not true, because now we are having peaceful protests and our people were all being arrested and sentenced under national security law.
And of course you've had to flee with your family to the United Kingdom as a result?
Yes, as a result, in 2020, after the national security law was implemented, my family and I has decided to leave Hong Kong, and after that, I have been settling in the UK through the BNO visa scheme.
Mark, the story of Chloe is not really unique anymore. I mean, we've seen so many people from Hong Kong forced to flee because they can no longer express themselves or talk about, any kind of criticism of China or of the authorities now in Hong Kong.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was one of the freest places in the world. It was probably Britain's most successful colony. And now we've had more than 1,900 political prisoners in the last 5 years. Hundreds of thousands of people have left, like Chloe and her family, and yet the authorities have pursued them even to the UK. They just put a £100,000 bounty on Chloe's head just for activities she's doing in the UK.
And I wanted to get to that, Chloe. I mean, it's quite extraordinary, actually, that you have this bounty on your head. You're living in the UK, seemingly as a free citizen, but you now have this bounty on your head from the Chinese authorities.
Yes, so the Hong Kong authorities placed a 1 million Hong Kong dollar, which is £100,000, on my head on Christmas Eve in 2024. It's basically because of my work with the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation. We do advocacy to free Hong Kong political prisoners like Jimmy Lai, Chow Hang Tung, Gui Natho, etc. And we produce different reports to highlight Hong Kong issues, and we also call for sanctions on Hong Kong officials who is accountable for national security law, etc. So basically, my job is talking to journalists, talking to politicians, and doing interviews like here right now, like what I'm doing right now is classified as colluding with foreign forces in Hong Kong under the Hong Kong authorities.
I mean, it's quite disturbing that they have this out on someone who now lives in another country.
Absolutely, and for activities that she's done here in the UK that are protected under British law. It's extraordinary. The reach of the Hong Kong authorities are now saying anything you do, anyone does, anywhere in the world that we don't like, we will pursue you to the ends of the earth. The chief executive said people like Chloe should be hunted like street rats to the end of the earth. I mean, it's very chilling.
I don't feel safe in the UK. We have saw lots of examples of bounty Hong Kongers or Hong Kongers in exile that got transnational repression. We have examples that a bounty Hong Konger who was beaten up on the street. We have Hong Kong protesters that don't even have a bounty, and he was dragged into Manchester consulate by a consulate staff, and there were no consequences for the consulate staff eventually. So I think the UK government is not doing enough to protect us who had a bounty on our head.
Why do you think the UK government is not doing enough?
The short answer is there's concern about the economy and a misguided, in my mind, belief that China is somehow going to save the British economy. Yet it's pretty pathetic that Rachel Reeves comes back with a £600 million deal over 5 years and thinks that that's worth essentially trading sovereignty for. We have people like Jimmy Lai, who's a British citizen, who's been held unjustly for more than 4 years, mostly in solitary confinement, yet the government hasn't even managed to get consular access for him.
And speaking of Jimmy Lai, Donald Trump, though, has said that he's going to try and get Jimmy Lai out.
Donald Trump promised that he would, that it would be easy to get Jimmy out, the 100% guarantee. And I was very encouraged to see Prime Minister Keir Starmer in front of Xi Jinping, the Chinese General Secretary, say that the government's concerned about Jimmy Lai. They need to push harder for Jimmy and for there are about 1,000 political prisoners still behind bars. And this was probably Britain's most successful colony in Hong Kong. It was left in a flourishing state. The Chinese promised freedom for 50 years, unchanged way of life. People like Jimmy Lai look to Britain. They look to the rule of law. They look to the protection of freedoms that they always had. And I'm afraid Britain is not really, is letting them down.
Do you think you'll ever be able to return to Hong Kong?
I think never, unless Hong Kong is free, unless they have the rule of law back, unless all political prisoners are released. There were no national security law that would stop people from speaking out the truth or speaking out against the authorities' policy, then I would go back to Hong Kong if all these happen.
That was Chloe Chung there and Mark Clifford. Well, we've been discussing the question of whether Ukraine could survive without America's support, and that's the focus of this week's podcast with me and, of course, NBC's chief foreign correspondent and my podcasting partner, Richard Engel, who joins us live from Ukraine at the moment. Richard, good to see you. I know that you're in Kyiv at the moment, but we've been seeing this sort of war of words between President Trump and President Zelenskyy. It started yesterday and it's continued to today. Is there a feeling in Ukraine and from all of your contacts, the people you've been speaking to, that President Zelenskyy took a sort of risk by doing this?
There is a feeling that he decided to speak up. And we have both interviewed President Zelenskyy in the past, and this is not a new issue. President Trump has always been looming in the background as someone who was, if he came back to office, was going to potentially reach out and quickly make a deal with Vladimir Putin. It was something that the Ukrainians were long worried about. And I asked President Zelenskyy many times, and I'm sure you did as well, what are you going to do if President Trump returns to office? And every time he was incredibly cautious. He was optimistic. He was hopeful. He was trying to say that, well, we'll find some sort of common ground and America's our indispensable partner. President Zelenskyy did an interview with Meet the Press, an NBC program, just a few days ago, and he was saying the same kinds of things. We hope that we're going to work together, and we hope we can still count on the U.S. But over the last couple of days, it seems like President Zelensky's patience was exhausted, and he responded by saying that he thinks that President Trump is trapped in some sort of disinformation bubble, that he keeps parroting Russian propaganda. But this was not something, as I'm saying, that President Zelenskyy decided to do lightly, because he's been asked this question about President Trump time and time again over the years and always been much more cautious than this.
Yeah, Richard, and of course you've been with a tank brigade. We're coming up to the 3-year anniversary. Is there a sense that, or is there war fatigue now in Ukraine, and especially from the Ukrainian people who, can also hear what the US president is saying?
There's war fatigue in the sense that they want the war to be over. I'm here in Kharkiv. Not only is it freezing cold, but the power is frequently cut. There were air raid sirens here just a short while ago. We were out at that tank position. You're seeing some of those pictures on the screen right now. Those soldiers have been at that particular tank trap dug into the mud for the last 3 years. One of the soldiers has only had 10 days off, he told me, in the last 3 years. And they are nervous. They are there because the Russians attack with drones and with missiles every day, particularly on clear days like it was today, and there were drones overhead while we were there. So they want the war to stop, but they don't think the responsibility is on them. They don't believe, as President Trump said, that they started the war. Instead, they're looking out and they're seeing Vladimir Putin's forces still attacking them, and they're seeing Donald Trump attacking with words their president, and they're worried that President Trump and President Putin are somehow colluding and both working against Ukraine and plotting to sort of divide this country up and carve off sections of Ukraine and cede them to Russia. So there's a real sense of vulnerability at places like that frontline tank position we were at earlier today.
Yeah, we were just looking at those images. And of course, as we said, these are all the issues that we've discussed on the podcast this week. You just saw it there on your screen. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. So do have a listen there. And Richard, stay safe. I look forward to speaking to you soon.
So much more to talk about. Great to see you on the air. And we'll continue on the pod.
Thanks so much, Richard. And this is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Lots more coming up. I'll be speaking to an expert in mass strandings to try to understand what's been happening off the Tasmanian coast. Stay with us for that.
I'm Gillian Joseph. Coming up on Sky News at 10, the war of words between the US and Ukraine intensifies. We're expecting Donald Trump to speak at 10 p.m. Elsewhere, we'll have an update on the Pope's health and the latest inflation figures. See you at 10.
Sunday, the Premier League is exclusively on Peacock. The league's most dynamic scorers square off. Goal for Haaland! Erling Haaland and Man City. It's a fantastic goal! Mo Salah and Liverpool. Time after time, he is Liverpool shining lights. This is the Premier League. That's just stunning! Sunday, only on Peacock.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Sky News, the full story first.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We start with breaking news.
I am Anna Botting.
It's been quite some day.
The golden age of America begins right now.
A long-awaited ceasefire is now underway.
First question, Sky News.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
Describe this feeling. It's incredible.
Now to California.
The Democratic mayor of Los Angeles cut the fire department budget.
Do you owe citizens an apology? Have you nothing to say today?
Jane Secker, Sky News. Would you like to respond to us now?
I've never seen anything like this.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
In principle, would you agree to do that?
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
Historic day here today.
The cameras are poised here, there, everywhere, waiting to see what the president might do next.
I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Mandatory evacuation. You must leave.
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks. I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent. Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. It's a shocking image. Some 150 whales beached on the shores of Australia's island state of Tasmania. Well, it's the third mass stranding in the last 5 years on the west coast of the Australian island. Officials announced that they were unable to refloat the whales and will euthanise them for animal welfare reasons. It's not clear what's caused the whales to wash ashore, but authorities are continuing to investigate the incident. Tasmania is located just to the south of the Australian mainland. Marine experts, including veterinarians, were at the scene in Arthur River in the northwest of the island. Well, joining me now is Andrew Brownlow, who leads investigations into mass stranding for the International Whaling Commission. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us here on the programme. It is a really shocking image, and every now and then we do see it, but it's not totally uncommon.
No, that's right. I mean, mass strandings have happened for centuries, millennia, and sometimes it's due to a number of different factors. It can be because of an intersection between social bonds, between the type of topography that you have in the area, sometimes the social nature of the animals, environmental factors, and all of that combine, and you end up with a situation where if one animal gets into trouble, then many others will follow it.
I guess the question is, why is it happening? Why did it happen?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? I mean, in some cases we have ideas what can lead to these stranding events. It can be because animals are ill, because they make a navigational error, because they're being disturbed by natural or human impact, the impact of underwater noise, the impact of toxins, pollution, disease, etc. It's often not just a single factor, though. It can be a combination of things that act together that can bring about these events. And particularly these events in Tasmania, they have this sort of unfortunate intersection of a really complicated bit of coastline. These populations of oceanic dolphins that are mainly seen in deep water, but sometimes come close to shore. And strong currents and changing prey distribution. And that perhaps is why that region has seen so many strandings over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the last time, those images that came out. And of course, we just told our viewers that they will need to be euthanized. Just talk us through that process.
Oh, that is grim. I mean, euthanasia is the last resort. But the problem that everybody has is that when an animal comes onto the beach, there's a cascade of processes that happen, which means even if it was completely healthy at the point at which it hit the beach, the act of it becoming and being stranded mean that it just would not survive, even if it would be possible to put them back out to sea again, which it often isn't. I mean, these are huge animals. They are 4 to 6 meters long. They weigh over a ton, sometimes up to 2 tons. As you can see, the weather is incredibly difficult to make rescuing very hazardous and very difficult. And often in these cases, for animal welfare point of view, the only thing you can do is to euthanize them, which is tragic in some ways, but from a welfare point of view is the only option we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just looking at those images now on our screens. As you say, they're truly devastating and really quite upsetting to see those. And then the idea of euthanizing them as well. Andrew, we're really grateful that you've joined us here on the programme. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Well, we're speaking a lot about the situation, the war of words between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy. We are expecting Donald Trump to speak at this event in Miami in the next few minutes. And of course, we will be coming to it live as soon as it happens. So Donald Trump is currently there and he will be speaking. But for now, from me and the team, good night.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem. Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.